All right, and we are now joined by Scott Reid, CTV News political commentator. Scott, thanks for being here today.
You bet. In my middle-class home, right across the housing spectrum here.
Now, the Liberal caucus retreat begins today. What top issues do you see being discussed?
It's going to be a grumbly affair. Bad polls in politics lead to bad meetings, and I think maybe for the first time, literally maybe for the first time since Justin Trudeau became prime minister, I think he's going to face a caucus unlike others, where I think he's going to be challenged. People are going to say, well, what is our plan, and how are we going to get out of this divot? I mean, they're 14 points back in the polls. Pierre Poilievre looks like he spent the summer getting wind at his back. The wind is pushing the prime minister down, literally keeping his plane on the ground this past weekend. So I think you're going to hear a lot of Liberals grumble and mumble about what needs to be done, and that'll manifest in we need a better housing policy. We need tougher attacks on Pierre Poilievre. We need a greater sense of purpose. We need to communicate better. But all of it's going to add up to a bit of a grumbly internal argument, I think.
When you look across the country, what is top of mind for Canadians right now?
Well, we all know the answer to that. It's affordability. It's the price of gas. It's the price of groceries. It's the cost of covering your mortgage. It's the inability of somebody who's in their 20s to gather together a down payment so that they can purchase a home like their parents did a generation prior. So those are the concerns that are on people's minds. And when you got tough economic times, it makes for tough times for incumbent politicians. When you're in government and the economy is not doing great, you tend to not do great. The trick for the Liberals is to demonstrate that they've got a way out of this, that their recipe is going to match the concerns and needs of Canadians, but without sounding like they don't get it, without sounding like they're telling people something that isn't true, that things are great and getting better. People don't feel like things are great and getting better. So you got to strike that balance. And I'll tell you, when people say, well, gosh, what Canadians need to realize is we're really lapping Italy and Spain, it makes people turn the TV off of their political leaders because they say, I don't live in Italy or Spain. I live here where the price of gas is this and the price of groceries is that, and I need those things to be addressed.
Now, several MPs have brought up the need for better communication with Canadians. What do you think this means?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, to be fair, that's not incorrect. I do think they need a sharper message to Canadians that speaks to people and connects with people about what the plan is, what their priorities as a government are, and how that's going to help people on a day-by-day pocketbook sort of issue. On the other hand, having worked for a prime minister, having served as a communications director in particular, I can tell you that the first refuge of all cowards is to say, we've got a great plan and a great story. We're just doing a bad job of communicating it. One of the challenges they're going to have to come to grips with is maybe their story isn't so darn great. So it isn't just about, oh, golly, we need a better communications plan. They're going to have to literally change some of the things that they're doing and emphasizing.
Now, falling poll numbers haven't seemed to raise much concern with MPs. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's starting to, and I think we're going to see whether that gets tested this week, because the MPs have been in their ridings, they've been at home, and they've heard the grumbles, they see the polls. And you're right, though. Justin Trudeau has lived an atypical life for a party leader and a prime minister. Very little pushback from his caucus, very little complaint, very little sensitivity to polls as compared to prior leaders. But I think this may be the exception. I think he may have to dance a little bit in front of his caucus. And most importantly, let them vent. I mean, a big part of caucus management, I can tell you from having watched Paul Martin, watching Jean Chrétien, certainly watching from afar Brian Mulroney, these past prime ministers, they let their MPs have their say. Now, they didn't always agree, and sometimes they challenged them, but they let them voice their concerns. Half of the trick is letting people know that they're being heard.
All right, we will have to leave it there. Scott Reid, CTV News political commentator, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Renee.